Hey there, listener. Welcome to the Deep Share Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rouse, and for the last couple of decades, I've slowly been opening my eyes to a very different world than the one I grew up hearing about. And the more conversations I have with interesting people, the more mystifying this world becomes. So without further ado, let's get deep.
We've got science to celebrate! Demons bliss out! After what, baby? Come on!
There is rebellion in the wind. It will be crushed.
Everything I've said is true. It's real.
Dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith.
A damn lie. I saw them with my own eye.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
We did illusions, man! None of it is true!
I'm not insane.
This is mass madness, you maniacs! In God's name, you people are the real thing! We are the illusion!
Alright, 3, 2, 1. Alright, bro, so we're here. I don't know why I'm counting it in because we're just talking.
Yeah, fuck it.
I feel so burned out. So I'm Juan from the Juan Podcast. This is going to be a Swapcast. You can introduce yourself.
Yeah, this is Andy Rouse from the Deep Share Podcast. What's going on? This is going to be a fun time.
The deep.
I don't think either of us have any agenda necessarily for this evening, unless, I don't have any real important things to talk about unless it just randomly comes up.
I just got done doing 2 presentations back to back. I did one on Donut Factory on the homunculus history. And that's not out yet, but shout out to Donut. He got Alex Jones played one of his clips on Alex Jones' show.
No shit.
So shout out to Donut because he's a really cool guy, and hopefully that'll be out soon on his channel, the Homunculus Rising, the strangest story ever told, where I go deep, and I'm talking about deep on the homunculus. And
I want to hear that.
I did one on Pythagorean palaces. And I did that, the number magicians, number forms, and arquitectura imaginalis, this research that I did on Emily Moyer's show. So I'm like exhausted. I'm taking a fucking break from doing any research of any kind. Like I'll pick up, I'm reading a fiction book right now, which I usually don't ever do, but it's still esoteric. So it's like, it's gonna be for my other show, the Occult Book Club. So,
hell yeah.
I'm just taking a break. I'm not really looking into anything. I've just been really perked up about the whole Pythagorean palace thing.
That's
where
cool.
they adhere to certain principles in order to encapsulate a higher dimension within that building. Mm-hmm. So all the Greeks built their buildings a certain way, according to Vitruvius, and he was inspired by Pythagoras and Pythagoreanism, all is number. And I relate the all is number thing to the Matrix. I think that Pythagoras was right by saying all is number. And if all is number, it's binary code, and it's binary code, it's a simulation. And if there's a simulation, then there's a creator. There's a programmer. There's an architect or whatever it is.
Perhaps. Well, I mean, definitely. But I think there's a lot of nuance there that we are going to have to uncover, because the idea that binary equals simulation is interesting when we find it in nature, because that would almost be that simulation is mimicking nature, not the other way around.
Well, the Pythagoreans also said that everything that exists in the world is an imitation of number.
So I would say the entire material plane is an imitation of what exists, unseen, right?
The theory of forms. It's a reflection of a higher, more divine world, which the problem with that is that it demeans this reality.
Does it though? Or does it just put it where it is? Right? I mean, we admit this all the time in our everyday lives, right? It's not don't judge a book by its cover, right? That's kind of what materialism is. And it's a part of life. It's a part of us. It's a part of everything. And I would say that it's, to me, life is very alchemical. So the physical and the, they say gross interpretation of reality is just as valid and important, because from our then again, that's from our perspective as humans. So who knows? I mean, maybe stepping outside of it, you see the folly in this illusion or something. But I don't know. I have a hard time with the illusion part, because it feels like a hoodwink. It feels like transhumanism. It feels like when I first came back from psychedelics, when I was too young to really understand what was going on. You can be very easily influenced. So the idea that everything was like quantum physics, man, and holy shit, this entire life that we're living is an illusion, man. It's fake. It's not even real. But that right there is where they hope that you're going to get off the train. And that leads to nihilism and atheism and all the rest. But if you stay on the train, you find out that it's not an illusion. It's just, this is like the actual thing that God or whatever consciousness has been thinking about and finally put into action. Now, how is that not valid, right?
I like that. Oh, this conversation got real deep real quick.
Real quick.
So my whole thing with that is, where I agree 100% with you, where you're talking about where if they paint this the worst picture possible, if they this reality is a very Gnostic, again, Platonic,
and we're all superheroes, remember, in a higher dimension.
It's a very Platonic thought of the demiurge, because that's who came up with the idea of how this body is a prison. It's a shell. It's a hollow shell, and it houses our soul, whatever that is, and it houses our consciousness, whatever that is. Right. And if they can demonize that or criminalize that, I can see where you're talking, where they'll come in and be like, hey, here's the Faustian Pact. Would you like to have all the knowledge ever? Just put this little chip right here in the back of your head, right? It's called the Neuralink. It's going to link you to, consider it a hive mind, and you'll be linked in there. And it's going to be great, because now you can download your consciousness into this USB drive. And whenever you're feeling sick, here's altered carbon. Here's a new skin suit. Here's a new fleshlight for you. And here we are. And it's just going to, a click of a button, boom, you have all your memories and everything downloaded into this new other shell, the synthetic shell now, right? Did you know that back then people married statues, and statues could marry each other?
Really? Is this similar to like that chick that married a bridge a couple of years back? Woman, I apologize. I'm from the 90s. I'm an asshole.
So I got this book, and I was flipping through it today, because by one of my now new favorite authors, George L. Hersey, and it's called Falling in Love with Statues. And he goes deep, and I don't think this is available online. You have to actually buy a copy of it.
This is wild.
He talks about, I was flipping through it, talks about falling in love with statues. And it just made me think of what you're talking about letting go of this, whatever this is, and downloading your consciousness into something, a vessel.
Well, right. I mean, so the way I look at it is, there's something about the body and the natural process that's essential, and everybody's afraid of death at some level. Even those that say, I ain't afraid of death. It's like, well, you're supposed to be, so that's weird. It's like, it's the thing. But because of materialism and because of reductionism, and, along with this past few years of scientism and this real huge duality going on in science itself, we've allowed all of this to start like kind of taking, I don't know, popular, or the whole populace, like more people, it seems, are becoming driven towards atheism now than ever before. And what that includes is exactly what I was doing when I first fucking got back from psychedelics. I was obsessed with Carl Sagan and now I don't think DeGrasse Tyson was around yet, but like everybody that was science-based and atheism-based, quantum physics, like Sam Harris, all these guys that are so fucking materialistic and are missing half of the picture altogether, right? So it's like, if we can make everyone atheists, everyone's going to be absolutely fucking terrified of death. more than ever before. Because, and even if they don't admit it, oh, I'm just going to, not think anymore. So it's fine. Like, well, you're going to be not yourself ever again. So therefore it's panic, it's terror until that day deep down. So I'm sorry I'm taking so long to get to this, but if you can make people more that way, then they're going to be a lot more apt to jump into a situation where they can possibly extend this forever, even if they have to give up their body, as long as they don't have to lose their thoughts and everything. And of course, it's a fucking trap, because that's not going to ever happen. You can't download the unnameable. I'm saying never. I don't like this idea of bringing the unnameable into this world.
They've tried though. I'm gonna tell you.
Yeah. How?
The ancients were talking about this, bro. The ancients, and there's something that I've always battled when going into research about Plato and Pythagoras and Thales of Miletus and all these guys, the fathers of Western philosophy, because they were just so far ahead of their time for when they were alive, and we're still using the Pythagorean theorem from 500, 600 today.
Yep.
That's one of the things I've always said, that we're using the stuff today. These guys were magicians. And I believe that theorems and formulas and all this stuff is a way. So this is how they were able to do it. This is the way. This is the way. I'm gonna tell you right now. This is how they did it, and this is how they're doing it. So back then there was this idea that they were fascinated with the way that how you're saying incorporeal, unintelligible things would transcend through different levels of reality. Now that's just a fancy way of saying, I have this idea from the ether. It goes into my head. From here, I have verbal expression. So I talk about it. I make a model, or I write it down on paper, and then I manifest it. So I make a building or whatever else, other medium.
Okay.
That's it. But
you're right. That's brilliant. Yeah.
That's they've done it already. They've already done it. And it goes back to
we do it too.
It goes back to Euclid. It goes back to Euclid. It goes back to the Platonic solids, and it goes back to the Cartesian coordinate system, because René Descartes, which he's the one that talked about the mind-body dualism, right? The Cartesian philosophy. He was the one that I believe, again, that mathematics is a form of magic. And I believe that, because I have experience with computer-assisted design and computer-assisted manufacturing, so I know about, my background is in electronics engineering and programming robotics. So I know about putting code into G-code into a computer and making things. And it's done through these, right? That you have the X and the Y, and then you have the Z axis. That was made by a guy in the year 1500 or whatever it was, 15th, 16th century, right? While he was allegedly, and I remember reading a book that the idea of the Cartesian coordinate system came to René Descartes while he was dreaming in a series of dreams. When I went to go back to confirm that for a presentation I did, it changed. Maybe Mandela effect, who the fuck knows? Or maybe I read it wrong and I remembered it wrong, because there's a lot of information going on in my head right now. But the story goes that he was laying in bed because he would wake up late every single day. He believed in sleeping in and all this stuff, and he would meditate, right? You have René Descartes meditations 1, 2, and 3 or something like that. And he was laying in bed and he saw a fly on his ceiling, and he wanted to be able to tell someone where that fly was in accordance to the X. So it was 1, 2, 3, and then it was up 1, 2, 3. So it was in the X 4, Y 4, and there it is. And that's how one of the greatest things ever to revolutionize, because it linked Euclidean geometry and algebra. And did you know that algebra meant bone setting in the 15th and 16th century, which I found really weird. The etymology of algebra meant bone setting. But it reminds me of alchemy, right?
Yeah.
Allah, the sacred. So it's mathematics. It's putting together the broken parts is what it comes down to. And I believe it's Arabic. I think it's Arabic. I'm not sure. I have to look at it again. But anyways, this idea that from this, everything that we know today as far as 3D modeling comes from this guy, right? And they link the two worlds together. They link the incorporeal with the physical, just from that, through mathematics. So
absolutely.
Through mathematics alone. They've been doing it since freaking at least the 15th century. But they were thinking about it again when Plato and Pythagoras and all these guys were there, because that was the whole thing with them. And Johannes Kepler, bro, he was talking about how the celestial spheres were one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Shit, yeah, let me refine so I didn't mean it that way. What I meant was,
prove you wrong. I'm just
no. I know. I appreciate what you're saying. What I kind of was trying to get at is that and I've said it before on the podcast, that like when you come back from the ineffable, the ego, the logical mind has to take over and explain it, and can only use memory to put new information together. So I don't remember my original point that I was trying to get to with that, but that's what I meant, at least, that our world is filled with supposition about what lies outside of this little bubble we're in.
I was under the impression that you were like super religious, because I've seen you. I don't know if it's you. I'm pretty sure it's you.
Dude,
religious God and stuff, I think.
Oh yeah, I use that word very freely. But I'm not religious. No, I mean, I guess you could say I'm religious about all religions because I'm fascinated by them and shit like that. But I'm not, and I believe that there is some form of a creator. But I think it's unknowable while we're here, and that's why pretty much every religion itself has been kind of it's close. It's always close. You know, it's like everybody's really close to the truth because we're all human and we all have this internal experience that we're all trying to explain the same unknowable, unnameable world. Right.
Yeah. And you mentioned nihilism earlier, because Nietzsche, he talked about God is dead. And everybody always goes back to, look at him, God is dead. No. It's, if you read the entire quote, it's God is dead and we have killed him, right?
Right.
Because he believed the whole thing of, if I think, and I was raised religious, right? And I know about that whole world. I did the whole thing. And I think that religion does serve its purpose when used correctly, but then they used it. They've weaponized it. Now they've weaponized it. And I talked to a theologian on my podcast, Dr. Lumpkin, and he talked, because I always ask the same question. I go, where is Christianity or plug in any other major world religion 1,000 years from now? You still think we're going to be talking about your boy JC or your boy Buddha or your boy Muhammad or anybody else? You think we're still going to remember those people, or is it? And he believes it's going to evolve, the evolution of religion. I think it's going to step away, and maybe, who knows? Maybe 1,000 years from now, it's going to be a Saint Elon Musk, bro.
Ugh.
Or a Saint. Saint Jeff Bezos. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, I can Bezos? Totally. Yeah, I can.
Ripped as fuck.
So like, yeah, that's definitely the human legacy. If we follow this idiocracy path that we're on, for sure, is just continuous false idol worship, right? I mean, that's kind of what's been our bag forever. And including, that's the thing, I totally jive with that like religion does serve a good purpose in a lot of ways. Like, one of the things
and purpose.
Well, that too, yeah. But even on the spiritual end of it, like I remember Ram Dass saying one time that like, as soon as you get it, as soon as you feel it, as soon as you experience it, you want to go into that church that you never used to want to go into, and you want to run up and down the aisles singing all the hymns and telling everybody, look right in the books, it's telling you the truth, it's right there. Not that of course he wasn't Christian or Jesus or anything like that. It was about the Christ, and I feel like Christ consciousness, that phrase, like I remember that term. It's been around for a while, but it's kind of been weaponized itself from this new age perspective. And of course, everybody wants to throw the baby out with the bathwater and run screaming from anything, occultish or whatever, because they think it's all evil because of shit like that. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm rambling now. I can't even remember what originally I was talking about.
Yeah, no, about because I think that's what I saw you post about Christ consciousness, where people were using it.
Yeah, I don't like that. Well, I find myself in that middle area where, like, I grew up. Well, I mean, after psychedelics initially hit me, that's where I woke up. That's where I was like, that was my first big whoa.
We done
when
DMT?
I was not. Yeah, actually, may or may not have some sitting off camera right now.
Dimethyltryptamine.
Yeah, that's shit.
Really?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've done it though.
I've
The
had
guy who
two
gave me
people-
this actually said, he's like, the guy I got this from said you don't owe him any money because the gods told him he couldn't make money off of it anymore. He had to give it away for free.
I've had 2 listeners of the show already hit me up to like, hey bro, you want to come over and do some DMT? I'm like, yes, person I've never met before. Shout out
That's
to
a
you.
comfortable situation.
I'm gonna go over to your house and do DMT with you. And you know the Flammarion engraving is the one where it's like the dome and the wizards like stepping out of it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like that. I think it would be ignorant to think that, number one, or before we continue, where do you stand on the whole space thing? Is it fake and gay for you, or is it a real thing? Like, what do you?
Oh, I definitely don't think it's fake. I don't think these assholes have the ability to create, so they have to just twist the truth. You don't really twist that like that. You know, I think it's not what it seems. I think NASA is never a straight answer, and it's a money laundering, but it's worse than money laundering when you start getting into Crowley and you know,
Parsons and them, yeah.
JPL and all that whole thing, you know, and all those connections. So it's not just money laundering, but all of that is full of shit. I find myself in the middle. This is, you know, to connect what I was saying before, just on a different topic. I talk to flat earthers, but I don't know that the earth is flat, and I don't think the earth is flat. I would be open to it. If it was, I wouldn't be standing there like bullshit. I'd be like, okay, cool. Shit. Yeah. Okay, what was I missing? My friends were convinced.
Or what does it change?
But, what's that? Well, yeah, I mean, I think it changes some things, you know, but because, well, to me, it's like there's a lot of spheres in mathematics. There's a lot of, I mean, is that part just fake? You know? Sacred geometry also, it's all about these you know, as above so below. And I actually asked a man that I legit respect, Eric Dubé. I asked him, like, you know, what do you think of as above so below? Because I know you have a lot of interests outside of flat earth and you don't fall towards the Christian side of things. You're more esoteric, you love all this kind of shit. What about as above so below? How does that fit? And he told me about Yggdrasil, and I was like, oh, cool. That's awesome. Thank you. Really. Okay. That clears some things up for me. But I walked away going, all right, but that's always been to me a cognitive model of consciousness, not of a physical earth or what we're living on. Like that whole Yggdrasil tree is so utterly, and as is all the other models of the earth from these ancient symbolic,
you know, which is my
obsessed
favorite
religions. These were not, you know, I know that we go hard to get literal translations versus metaphor in religion, and it's such a difficult crux to be a part of, because like I believe that there's both. There is a lot of literalism in religion and all the mythologies, but there's also metaphor. And I think they're all stewed up together, and it takes a long time, and we're missing like the keys to how we should be separating things, if that makes any sense.
The code. And my favorite earth cosmology, shape, orientation, whatever. There's this book from the 1800s called Christian Topography.
Interesting.
And it talks about how the earth, the universe and the earth is in the shape of a tabernacle, but it's also like a chest. So you open it.
Sounds like Hollow Earth.
Oh yeah, almost like, but I'll pull it up, but it's really interesting. It's really,
yeah, that sounds cool. I want to see this. Speaking of Hollow Earth, I would rather say like cavernous Earth. You know, I think it's probably more like that. And if there's like cities down there and shit and people or something, that'd be pretty cool. And I think it's possible. Maybe there's cave systems the size of fucking Manhattan, you know?
Oh, there is though, dude. Have you ever seen I believe it's I don't know how to say it's Vietnamese, Dong Nong cave, I believe. I'll pull it up.
I haven't. That's not that one. No, there was one in China recently, right? There was like, there's trees growing in it.
Not that one. I have another one.
No, different one.
This is from the book from the 1800s, Christian Topography, and this is the model of the earth. So you have the sun, you have the moon, I believe, and it's like a mountain, and it's in the shape of something about the tabernacle and all this crazy. Let me.
Dude, so basically what that showed me was a firmament in the form of a chest.
Here, cosmology. Put
Everything's-
forward the
yeah.
idea that the world is flat. So it's actually one of the first books ever to talk about the world being flat, and it was around the 550 AD, and it's got all these weird pictures. And let's see here, originally written in Greek with illustrations and maps, his view of the flatness of the world may have been influenced by some Jewish and Eastern contemporaries, while most of the Christians of the same period maintained that Earth was a sphere. The work advances that the idea that the world is flat and that the heavens form the shape of a box with a curved lid, and especially attacks the idea that the heavens were spherical and in motion, now known as the geocentric model of the universe. Wow. Okay. Right on. So shout out to that guy. So it is flat. So here's the Earth, but then the celestial, what we see is in the shape of a lid. So it's almost like Pandora's box, I guess, because it's kind of has
Could
to
be.
do. I mean, it said it was Greek, the first translation. That's also I believe it's a Greek.
Which is weird because nothing comes from Greek. Nothing comes from Latin. That's a fucking lie.
Yeah.
If you look at any word and type in origin next to it, you're always going to come to Latin. And that's all they're going to say about it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Horseshit.
Interesting. Yeah. So that, but think about it, bro. His story. So that's all. That's
His story, literally.
As far as we can go, as far as it comes to history, is like the oldest piece of literature is the Epic of Gilgamesh, but it doesn't mean that they weren't writing stuff.
Maybe.
That was the oldest surviving piece of literature. Doesn't mean that maybe a flood washed the other shit away, like the Library of Alexandria and all that stuff. But back to this hollow earth, because that's where I stand. That's the camp that makes my nipples hard. A hollow earth where,
well, because a hollow earth doesn't even have to really mess with a lot of the, I mean, dare I say, narrative. Like, I'm not that I'm trying to believe the narrative, but you know, if the earth is round in a way and it's like that's a lie they couldn't get away with it or something, I don't know. I don't know how it would work, but I would still think that a hollow earth could be applicable, you know, without pissing too many people off, right?
Song Dong, Vietnam. It's the world's biggest cave system, and you talked about having systems as big as Manhattan. Well, check this cave system out. And my buddy lives a few hours away from this in Vietnam. And look at the tents here, bro. And look at this entire cave.
I've seen that. Yeah. That's fucking, it's big.
Look,
yeah.
This is a person, bro. So the wait time to get in here is super long. Because I told when my buddy first told me about this, I was like, dude, I want to go. We should go there and camp out or whatever.
Yeah.
Dude, it's literally an entire ecosystem. There are certain species of animals only found within this cave system.
That's wild.
It's got its own atmosphere. It produces its own clouds. It produces its own oxygen because it's got an entire rainforest on the inside of it. So you're going to tell me that at one point in time, there was maybe some civilization that thrived within the... Look at Darren Kuyu, right? Miles and miles and miles of an underground city that was built for what? Oh, to defend the Muslims and the Byzantine Empire. And all this. No, it's bullshit, bro. There was no way that you... could have built that fast enough before you knew that they were coming, right? Like it doesn't add up. Like the mainstream educational system is a Rockefeller byproduct. We know this. They took over all that shit. All the textbooks, they write all the textbooks and all the stuff and all the information that we're getting.
But the thing is they've been writing shit forever, and most of the books they haven't wanted around are gone. Or I would say all of them, but because to me it's like, even when we talk about like 13 bloodlines or this or that, it's like, and then we name all the names, it's like there's all the bad guys. It's like you remember that movie Last Action Hero with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
I don't think I ever saw that movie, bro. I'm sorry.
It's okay, it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's just like, it's such a, it seems like a cop out to me, where it's like, oh yeah, those are all the bad guys, go get them. It's like that they're giving us those names, like all the names that we could say out loud. We're probably not. I don't think we're on the right course.
I agree.
You know?
I agree.
I mean,
the ones that you don't know
degree.
about is the ones that you need to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, and we're not talking like, oh, that guy like doesn't act like he's in charge, but he is. He's in charge of a defense company, but he's kind of running the country behind Bush's back. And that's not what we're talking about. We know those names. We know all of their names. Those are not, even Rothschild and all that, still front families for something much more inner circle, I think.
How wild this is, bro. So what ends up happening is that, and I've seen how this is formed in a document, I think it was a documentary or something, in what you're talking about in China. But essentially, there's years and years of buildup of rock, and then it's like Swiss cheese on the inside, and eventually an open part, a pocket will break up to the surface, how you see here, and that's what lets all the light in order for an entire forest like this one down here to start growing. So you have these openings where the light comes in, and that's where you get all this vegetation starting to grow, because you have the underground, you have water that runs all throughout this. So if it has water and has sunlight, boom, you got the plants, and it starts to grow.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like the pores of the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I totally agree that there could be massive undiscovered or, hidden caves that they're probably in conjunction with a number of bases. Like, how many DUMBs did they say are supposedly around the world internationally? Like 57 or maybe 157. I can't remember, but still,
what'd you say?
Like the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Like at some point there was like a number thrown out, and like how many are supposedly around the world. And it's, whether it was 50 or 150, either way, 50 is pretty ridiculous. And they're probably in areas that have access to these underground cave systems. I wouldn't doubt at all. Like, that's the thing about like Ancient Aliens, the Gaia show, Ancient Civilizations, like all those kind of shows that are kind of like hokey and they seem like programming. They're just programming it with like fucking ancient aliens. But to me, it's all ancient humans. It's like, this is real. And we know 2% of what really has been going on human wise on this planet since our conception, because we've been around a lot longer than they say. I had Michael Cremo of Forbidden Knowledge or Forbidden Archaeology on my show early on, like a year and a half ago. And him and his team found human remains that were in unagitated sediment that was 4 million years old.
What?
But of course, he's been discredited and all that. Just
That's
the same.
Fucking
the same
crazy,
thing.
bro.
And excuse me. Yeah, I think there was a more recent Brandon from Expanding Reality podcast. Shout out to Brandon. He posted something today about something that was like 2 million year old.
He stays posting some fire, bro.
Yeah, man. Lately, holy shit, he's been throwing out some crazy stuff. He's been finding some wild things. And one of them was this like 2 million year old modern human tooth that was discovered recently.
So I don't know if this is the video that I saw originally, but this is a sinkhole that opened up in China that led to this discovery of this massive cave system. I don't think it's the one where it's the underground. Oh, here we go, right here. This is the one. The mystery. Yeah, this is 47 minutes long. I'll send you this, but essentially they found underground forests. And I don't know if it was the same sinkhole or not, but dude, these guys, I watched this entire thing. It's really fascinating. And they go around, they talk about how these places are formed, dude. And check this out. I'm going to find one where they're climbing up and you see just the massiveness. So they're trying to find certain rock in here that would tell them like how it was made or whatever. And they're trying to find it and study it. But dude, they go into this cave. So they're swimming in this water, dude. I don't know if you've ever seen these under.
Oh yeah, man, dude. The Descent movies is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And my buddy and I walked into that theater thinking this was just going to be some cheeseball horror flick. Like, let's just laugh for an hour and a half. We walked out of there like, I am never going spelunking.
Check this out, bro.
Ever.
Look at this. So they zoom out and you see the massiveness of this place.
That's the thing about cave systems and mountains. When you try to photograph and film trips down caves and up mountains, when you bring it back home, it's never the right magnitude. Like, it never delivers that. But that's pretty good right there. That's a pretty intense shot right there.
Wow.
Damn.
Oh, dude.
This thing, for those listening, this thing is like, this opening is like the size of...
Wow.
like a building, basically,
So
like a
imagine,
giant building.
I like to envision how the ancient people would have lived. Imagine, let me pull this up again. Imagine, and we'll post the video version. Imagine seeing a cave opening like this as some prehistoric man, right? You have your little loincloth, right, covering your balls or whatever, and you got the sphere in your hand, and seeing something like this, bro, you would think like this is the entrance to another dimension, to another
Absolutely
entire world, right?
Hell yeah.
And that's why
whatever
they
we thought
saw-
of as kids, that's how a primitive man would have probably thought.
And it goes back to how you were talking about these occult groups, that they understood what ancient man was talking about, and that's why you have a lot of secret societies that go underground into caves. You have Freemasons who go into cave systems to do their thing, right? Probably a lot of butt stuff, who knows, but they do their thing. And it goes back to this, it talks to our primal nature. That's why storytelling talks to our primal nature, and that's why people are so drawn to it. All these podcasts about storytelling, it goes back, it talks to that number one, that inner child, and then that ancestral man within everybody.
Absolutely.
And it's like, I love a good story, I love a good movie, I love the good entertainment. It goes back to the time where they didn't have movies or entertainment or anything like that, and they were just drawing on the cave walls. And I also learned that they were drawing on the cave walls things, not because it looked good, but because they used them as talismans in order to invoke whatever they were painting. So if they were painting a buffalo, they wanted to invoke a buffalo. They were practicing magic. They thought that that's why hieroglyphs are literal depictions. There's nothing supernatural about hieroglyphs, because the ancient Egyptians believed that if they drew a donkey in this world, a donkey from this world, and it had two saddlebags, the donkey that they were going to draw in that world, this picture world, this mundus imaginalis world, this imaginary world that's not fake, but it's real, it's like in between, whatever. They needed to depict it like the real one, because in that world, that donkey couldn't handle 4 bags. It could only handle the 2 that the real donkey here can handle. So when they would paint things, they wouldn't paint things like all crazy. Obviously, they had their mythology, but they took it as literal fact. And I believe that the mythology starts to evolve because they believe that these pictures as well was a way to invoke their gods, right? It was another, and you have all the dynasties and everything. So you had an evolution of their religion and everything else as time went on. But I learned that recently, that they were painting pictures of animals in order to invoke them. So they're hunters and gatherers.
So it sounds like primitive manifestation, right? Or probably way advanced, because there was no blockage probably going, no past traumas really, other than real traumas that they had to physically deal with and get over.
Yeah.
I try to look at things like really fractally and all that, and the individual versus the, humankind, the micro to the macro. And I look at the behavior of children and infants and things like that. And I wonder if there were periods of human history that represented those younger ages in a man's life, use the archetype, right? Because all the moments, all the stories that come from one's life, you can kind of see those stories mapped out onto humanity as well. These big ups and downs. Like I often say that just as an individual goes into psychotherapy and hypnotic regression or whatever to face their fears and face their past traumas so they can move forward in the present, that's kind of what we're doing. We're digging through our collective history right now, and all the shit's coming out of the closet, up and out of the ground. All the bones are coming up. We're digging through our collective traumas of humanity, which some of it's, based on other humans doing horrible things, but other traumas are probably from natural things that occurred. A devastating asteroid hitting the planet per se, that not only causes like massive death everywhere and extinctions, but like for those that survive, it causes massive, horrible lives for generations, which on a mental level, on a cognitive level, on a raising children level, on a, that is stress, anxiety, fear, just hatred, everything that breeds from a destructive force like that, right? is very similar to a child having a horrible, abusive, upbringing or something. It's micro to macro. So I what you're saying about these cave drawings, it's like, man, you often hear about children being much closer to source or closer to God. And it's like, that's why they can sometimes see things, this and that. It's like, well, then maybe man itself, the species, was more in tune and more, it all came natural more back then, which is interesting. I don't know if you covered any of this stuff in the homunculus tales, but like the idea that perhaps through maybe not the established version of evolution, the way they tell it, but maybe a broader spectrum, maybe they're giving us half truth or something. Through evolution, we kind of evolved out of animals. So animals are like the ultimate in tune or something, I don't know. I'm kind of getting out there now, but the idea of mankind being more in tune back then makes sense. It talks to the idea of ayahuasca being able to even be produced. 50 million species of plants in the Amazon. And these guys figured out that you can only trip balls if you mix it with this MAO inhibitor and make it edible. And you got to mix that.
How many people died trying to figure that out?
Maybe, or maybe they picked the first one and it was right because they say the plants told them.
That's the
which
trippiest part.
I've heard that interpreted as well. That was the fallen angels. Like, okay, let's hold that. Let's not throw that away. Let's use what people mean by fallen angels. Let's go into all the archetypes. Let's go into all the traits and personalities and what's the symbolism behind these fallen angels. Well, maybe it relates to what we would agree with if we threw it out anyway. I don't know if that made any sense. Like, okay, it's not fallen angels. What is it? It's the plants. Well, it's a communication between mankind and the plant life. Okay, well, that speaks to lower vibrational, that speaks to what they say in the Bible about the serpent anyway. It's you'll be low with the animals and all that kind of shit. So it does relate to the fallen angels, even if you want to throw it away and not believe that it's fallen angels. Fine. But you can still, the archetype stays the same. It's all the same fucking story. So whether I guess I'm taking the horror and fear out of it, right? It's like, yeah, you can interpret it that way, but along those same archetypal lines, following all the, the history and the characters of who these fallen angels were and what they represented. Well, yeah, they represent this lower vibrational, in tune with nature, baseline reality. What is kind of mentality. I don't know if that was a stretch, but yeah.
You're not too far-fetched. I mean, that's the whole Darwinism thing, right? That man was from this primordial ooze, and then there was like this tadpole that popped up, and then that tadpole like grew legs, and it turned into like some serpent, and then
frog
that turned into like whatever else, right? Like that's the whole thing,
right? So we have a reptilian form while we're before we're born, early on.
Yeah, you look like a little lizard person, and I think some people
are all the ultrasounds just CGI? Are we gonna go that far? Like, come on.
Kind of, but I like that though. I like that, and the homunculus thing. It's the artificial man, but it comes from
true.
It comes from Aristotelian biology, which Aristotle, again, back to this whole thing that he was inspired by Pythagoras. Aristotle. Whoa, who would have thought? Pythagoras. Pythagoras was the one that came up with spermism, and Pythagoras was the one that came up with eugenics. This is Pythagorean thought. So no wonder he's revered by these secret societies like the Freemasons and whoever else, and they have statues of him. Like I had a buddy of mine who's a Freemason. He has the Freemason journal. He's like, hey, look, they have Pythagoras in this
yeah, I've seen that too.
Journal. I'm like, oh, cool. Well, I mean, it goes back to that whole thing, but they believe that everything was either spontaneous generation or sexual generation, and it was really misogynist. And I get into that whole thing on the Donut episode. I'll send it to you.
I'm very pumped to hear that, man, because I remember, I honestly haven't listened or watched Donut in a long time, but I remember like from years ago, he was everywhere. He was posting so much awesome content. Probably still is. Probably just extremely shadow banned or something. But yeah, I'm excited to hear that, man.
I did that episode on his show, not to toot my own horn, but he did say it was the best episode he's ever done. So
that's great. That always feels nice.
Dude, one thing that really I love is when a guest is like, that's a great question. I go,
yeah, man. Dude, I'm like, say it again. Oh. Like I did well. Are you telling me I did okay?
Like you're fucking trying to hold it. Oh yeah.
I've had that happen too. After a guest has like paused for a good few seconds, I'm like, fuck. It's like, that is it. I never thought of it that way. I'm like, oh, okay. You had me there for a second.
The thing is, I can get a mental picture that like, well, and you're just like, oh shit, and like this inner monologue, like what's like some like an anime when they freeze and like they go into like his head, he's like, it's like all in his head and shit,
and the lines are just behind him. Yeah.
Oh shit, bro, it's hilarious. Yeah, but I love that when a guest is like, yeah, that's a really good question. I go, fuck yeah, dude. Fuck yeah.
I've had the opposite too. I've had like, do you think you could try to ask me that in another way? I'm like, hell yeah! Like, I'm
garbage ass question.
It's great too because it like, I knew that I had something there, so okay, thank you. I get to articulate it again, because I mean, dude, speaking off the cuff all the time is like, man, it's pretty wild. There's no, I don't cut anything, I don't edit anything. I just put it out there. So
you just
I'm just as dumb as I sound.
Like, man, this guy's got some really shitty questions today.
We're all just no shit, right? Like, boo.
He just logs out, bro. He's like, man, fuck this guy in his interviews.
I gotta start tracking like how stoned or not stoned I am.
Well, dude,
wonder, like a lot of times it's the type of weed. I actually do, and most of the time it's a good thing because I actually think more out of the box anyway, and come up with more questions. Mostly it's the type of weed, though. I think if I smoke indica, I'm fucked, and I usually wouldn't during the day. But
it's a wrap. Yeah, no, I only do sativas just because of that. And I recently I got stoned the other day because I fucking ran my knee into the side of my bed, and it's like a corner like that, dude. And bro, it hurts so much. I saw stars, dude. And I'm just like in the room, like on the floor, and my wife's like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm just making noise. I'm not even saying words. So I got stoned the other day because my fucking knee hurt. But I had taken a break for like almost like 2 months before that, and my dreams came back.
Yeah, I think you were telling me that when we were talking with Dan. That's pretty wild. Well, you were talking about being on a break then, maybe. I don't know. I can't. Yeah, I thought you mentioned something, or maybe I heard you talk about it. I don't know. Now I'm in another dimension. No, but that's cool, man. I've heard that.
Swapcast, I think.
I've heard that your dreams come back, and I do miss my dreams. I miss nightmares. Like, they were getting really interesting as I got older. Like,
what do you like? So do you remember? Because this is what the science says, that if you something in THC inhibits you from not that you don't dream, but it inhibits you from being able to remember your dreams. I remember listening to that on a Joe Rogan podcast. Like,
I did too.
Upon a time, and this idea, because after they came back, I was able to recall my dreams, dude, like to the fucking T. But
that's awesome.
It's also because I did this thing that I read in this, I forgot where I got it, but it's called the skull fuck method, where you're supposed to be able to remember dreams better, and you're supposed to picture a giant blue dick fucking the hole at the bottom of your skull. So you just think of a watch.
Go on.
Just go. So you're supposed to lay down right in the dead man pose. So you're just like this. And apparently, homie Romy told me it was yogic or something like that. I had another guy tell me it was Freemasonic. And anyways, so you lay down like this and you picture a light, so a huge dick coming up from your feet. And as the dick is coming up your body, you picture it illuminating your entire body. And as it gets further and further through your body, right, you're gonna insert it right into your fucking skull, like the base of your skull, and allegedly it's, I don't know. Hey, but you have 95% retention rate in your dreams, and it's helped me, bro. I promise you. It sounds
that is
fucking
wild.
crazy. It sounds
yeah, it does. It sounds like something like you'd come back to and be like, "Hey, it didn't work. What? You actually tried it, man?"
Well, that's the whole thing, because like I have people, because I'm not a practicing occultist, but I do read about the occult a lot, and I have people like, don't you ever want to, like, I don't know, fucking try whatever you're fucking reading about? I go, yeah, sure. I mean, but it's like the Faustian pact. How much are you willing to give up? So I mean, I'll picture a blue dick coming up from my feet until the fucking bottom of my skull. I'll do that, but am I gonna fucking try and summon Baphomet or something? That's like what I was telling you before the show, where you wonder where some people, and dude, any major religion, if you really think about it, is from some sort of divine intervention. So the idea that I proposed to you at the beginning, before we start recording, that I always try and, whenever I'm doing research, I'm looking for that next, shot of dopamine, and the that fucking shit. I love that feeling where it fucking blows your mind. So I'm looking for that next moment, and it always seems like some researchers are always, they go harder in the paint than you do, harder in the fucking paint. And like these famous researchers, I'm like, fuck, where do they get their information from? And quite literally, there are some who have admitted to getting it from other worldly sources, other worldly entities, other things outside this realm of existence. So not from a book, not from a book. No. From some other thing outside the fabric of reality.
Okay. This is awesome. And we got to talk about it, because I don't think you're talking about what I'm thinking, but it matches up. It parallels perfectly. You just kind of described the entire UFO community.
Well, I described any major world religion.
Well, true.
Even the Code of Hammurabi was of divine intervention. The 10 Commandments was divine intervention.
Sure, yeah,
all
absolutely.
these things were. Muhammad had a prophetic vision, right, from an angel or something like that, and that's one of the world's major religion. John D. and Edward Kelly, talking to angels for knowledge is not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility that they were doing these things. I kind of lost where I was going to go with that. It's just that.
So I'm going to type
again. It's okay. So, well, this is what I was going to go with. That is that, again, like I said earlier, it's that ecstatic, ineffable, shocking, perturbing conscious experience that your ego is just wrecked by. You're helpless. You're in the arms of fate. And then you come back to your egoic state with your right-brained logical thinking and have to make sense of it using memory and nothing new, just all your old archetypes that you have to build things around, because that's how the brain works here, at least. So all of these people that have, and me included, my message, everyone, it's coming from something inside of us, something that's outside of us, whatever. There is no inside outside in reality. And we try to name it when we get back here every time. And it's close, but there's always some part of you or your ego in there that goes along with it. And that can be said not just on an individual level, but on a cultural level too, and that goes for the UFO community as well. But even talking about religions, it's the same thing. Looking at people in the UFO community that have this insane, this extremely powerful, proud, arrogant Stockholm syndrome for the government, and just bow down to every new puppet that comes along to tell us the truth about aliens. Yeah, man. I want to believe, but I absolutely fucking don't.
Brought to you by Pfizer.
So we're talking about two completely different things.
We're going in two different directions. I just needed to, I'm going to come back away from
I
the
sent
UFOs.
you a private message don't say what it says, because there are people listening.
Fair enough.
Quite literally, there are people listening, but eventually the truth will be out there. But what I was talking about is people who intentionally initiate this relationship with this other thing on the outskirts of reality. And because if you think about a UFO abduction or a person who had an experience of the phenomenon, they didn't. I mean, you could say that they were projections of their psyche, because it goes back to what the fucking Aleister Crowley is what I call him. Aleister Crowley talked about how goetic magic is actually different sections of our brain. So it's things within our brains that we're able to control.
Right.
So it's not demons. No, there's parts of your mind, parts of your subconscious, and it's what Carl Jung talked about the subconscious, the dark self. And I've also heard that with all these of crossing the abyss and path working, right, occultists and bornless ritual ones, where they cross the abyss of the tree of life and all this shit in order to kill off the ego. I've also heard that if you're able to manifest your dark self, it will show you the secrets of reality. Like that's I've heard it put that way, and it goes back to what, we're talking about, a divine intervention or demonic intervention. But you have the Book of the Law, you have the Ala Mantra workings, you have the Cairo workings, where you had these entities present themselves to Crowley, and he wrote books on them through a medium. So again, it's the outer skirts of reality. John Dee and Edward Kelly, they were talking to otherworldly entities. And if you read the descriptions, and I've read the actual source material, the actual Latin source material of John Dee and Edward Kelly, of their seances, because they were doing seances and they were taking copious notes, and they were doing seances for up to 12 hours a day, bro. And a lot of their descriptions, I relate them to, bro, to the Pleiadians, right? The almost Nordic looking type of alien. Yeah. Their descriptions of some of these entities, some of these emperors, and they had emperors and governors, right? They had these which are like princes of hell and shit. I don't know. It's something really crazy, but when they describe it, I go, it almost sounds like they're talking to some sort of alien, like some. It is an alien thing, and what it was revealing to them. Allegedly, one of the ones gave John Dee a ring, and it was the same angel that gave Solomon the ring to control the demons. You have the 12 seals of Solomon and all these things, and it was the same one. And it even tells John Dee again, because this is all written by him. So who the fuck knows if he even was making this up? But the angel's like, yeah, I was there when I gave a ring to Solomon. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I actually know that story. Dan and I have actually briefly, unfortunately, we'll have, now that we're talking about it, I'd like to maybe dig back into it, but we were thinking about at one point digging into their work because of that description. Because, of course, I don't know, you've heard, the whole Bach saga thing is, we're enraptured by that idea, or at least where that sparks into a million other ideas about history. And then, I've been looking into so many different cultures, folklores, and it's always telling, and it's always revealing of these humans that were, these Nordic people, basically, these tall, white-haired, blue-eyed, green-eyed, red hair, blonde hair. It seems to, in all the arc, like you mentioned, just joking, maybe he made all this up too. I don't know if it's that, but when we were looking up a couple passages, it was like, well, that relates to this and that it all related to a lot of symbolism in Bach saga and things like that. And it would go and like, not just the same symbolism, but used in the correct context where it would be referring to the same meaning of the symbol. So when those coincidences happen around saga, it's weird because it always happens in folklore and religion and things like that. But it also, with my eyes looking at the UFO shit, it's always happening with certain alien races too, where it's like, well, that sounds like maybe Breakaway. civilization, not aliens from another planet. Like because I'm
So you're
just
trying
tied
to
into
get at-
this.
So
I
you're
don't
trying to-
believe ancient aliens. I'm not saying that we're not being visited now or something like. Who knows what's going on? What the government's trying to cover up and put a bunch of straw things in front of. Whatever that is, that's something else. But our ancient alien shit, that's a way to hide history. Folklore is all about the fair folk. We've talked about this. That's what I'm talking about. So, yeah.
You should have Jared Murphy on, bro.
What does he talk about?
It's not aliens worse, it's us.
I absolutely love that. And I think I might have heard that before. So
yeah, and
cool. I'll have to look into that.
He gets into the whole thing of again, it wasn't aliens, it's us. It's a highly advanced human being, and he talks about the black aether, where how the Amazon rainforest was an out of control botanical garden. And they've always told us, oh, it's too dense for anybody to live here. And here they are clearing it away. It's like, oh, entire cities, entire settlements of, that means people would have had to. Oh, okay, so people did live there. Now, what's going on with history? It's you got to back up. And I understand that we're not going to get everything 100%. I mean, if people don't even know. Yet. We don't even know how the fuck they built the pyramids. We don't even know what they were built for. So the idea that we're going to be able to decipher anything, but when these individuals, these lizard-like people, the establishment, the authority, the archons, whatever they may be, when they become the truth, when they push that upon everybody else and no, this is the truth, that's what bothers me. When they tell you know how many miles there are in a light year, bro? 7 trillion miles. Begin to fucking comprehend that X planet is 100 light years away or 2,000 light years away or something or other. And 1 light year is 7 trillion miles.
Yeah.
How does that even begin to make any sense at all?
Like to the rational mind, you mean?
Yeah. How the fuck do you imagine 7
You need
trillion?
abstract, right? Mathematics. I mean, like you said from the very beginning, it's the abstract, it
the incorporeal
materializes everything. It brings the incorporeal into the corporeal. And I guess only by symbolism, because only symbolically.
I have this telescope here.
Oh, that's beautiful. Awesome.
It's back in here somewhere. Anyways. And I can look at these celestial bodies like if they're right there. But then I've looked at Saturn, I've looked at all these nebulas, I've looked at everything.
That's awesome.
And you're gonna tell me that it's trillions of miles, billions of miles away? That's crazy, and I can see it from this tube that I have.
It's what's funny? Can I just? It's wild, and it's like. I think, shit, where was I going? Just like the whole space is fake thing. Like, I get it, like I get why it's presented that way a lot of times. But at the same time, I just, this whole idea that they're selling us a chaotic, massive universe to make us feel small. Like, take the they out of that. If anyone is preaching humbleness, it's God. Because anytime I've ever been for me, it was psychedelics for the most part, in those vulnerable states of spiritual understanding and coming to grips with reality and all those kind of moments, it was humbling, if anything. And that's what getting down on your knees when, you're in church or whatever it is, like, that's what that's about anyway. It's the whole symbolism behind God and, the Almighty, right? So, yeah, I don't know. That's how I feel about it.
I'm gonna read this quote. Give me 1 second.
I think it's just humbling for a good reason, And it also shows us the fractal nature of everything,
Yeah, I got a bunch of fucking books on.
That's awesome. Yeah, I need a bookshelf in here that matches these weird walls. What is this?
Simulacra and Simulation. Ooh. John Baudrillard, right?
Yeah, I've seen that before. I don't know if you showed me or someone else did, but that looks very intriguing.
So, one of my favorite quotes, and it's right at the beginning of the book, because you're talking about experiencing God, right?
Yes.
Understanding what God is and seeing him and feeling him and all this stuff.
Yes.
The simulacrum is never what hides the truth. It is the truth that hides the fact that there is none. The simulacrum is true. So at all these establishments and all these things, they've taken these images and they've turned it into the deity.
Yes.
That's a simulacrum.
It's a representation.
It's a representation of the divine. But some
never supposed to be
communities,
worshipped.
Never supposed to be worshipped. But then I have this book that talks about how people were falling literally in love with statues. And then
absolutely,
I was reading here that they would sacrifice. So we talked about artificial intelligence and all this shit at the beginning, or artificial life.
Yeah.
And in short, I'm going to read an excerpt. In short, real people could marry statues, statues could marry each other, and real people and statues could both be sacrificed. Not a matter of artificial life, this time you might say, but artificial death. And
wow.
This guy, bro, I came across him by accident.
Yeah.
While actually doing some research on John Dee and Edward Kelly, actually.
Oh, nice.
About mirrors and catoptrics, which is the the idea of taking mirrors and reflecting everything out into each other. And back then, John Dee was real big into this, where they believed that you could use the soul as a sort of mirror in order to project the astra, this light that was coming from the divine or something, and you could infuse that into your real world. That's magic. Is Al-Kindi, which is an Arabic philosopher and one of the fathers of optics, he talked about how everything is light. Everything is light. Everything is an emanation of light. And I believe that the people who can control that light are the magicians, are the people who can bend reality and put it on their will. Because when you have two lights coming together, it's an alchemical process, and that has an effect, and that has its own effect. So my light interacting with your light has one effect. Your light interacting with your wife's light has that effect, and your children and all this stuff. And there's people who can manipulate that light and turn it around and all this stuff.
The thing is, we're all manipulating it. They've been initiated to understand how to do it so you don't destroy yourself. But unfortunately, they've also gained the idea that you can basically sacrifice others in order to gain your own will. Like,
it goes back to the Faustian pact, bro. How much are you willing to give up, Andy?
But it's also
in the universe,
bro. It speaks to like the middle ground with Crowley and shit. Like, Crowley was the piece of shit. Crowley was a piece of shit. And I would say a lot of the ways in which on the public facing side of what he spoke about magic was a twisted perversion of what we all kind of naturally do all the time. And to what degree it's really interesting. Like, I think a lot of us are a little aware, and then a little more aware, and then a little more aware. And it's so subtle. And on what level? It's kind of like being awake. Like, we call ourselves awake in this community, but like, to what degree? Like, oh, I'm awake. I'm awake because Q told me what was going on. Is that awake? Right? Like, yeah, sure. They're not buying into the democratic craziness that's going on. Okay, you got 1 point there. You're still, you know what I mean? None of us are awake. We're all fooling ourselves. But I can't remember where I was going with that really, but there was something
that happens to you a lot, doesn't it, Andy?
Yeah. It's probably because I'm actually smoking indica tonight.
Yeah, dude. I think that the truth is stranger than fiction, and I don't know, man. Like, my dad died 4 times, bro. I don't know anybody else who's died more times than my dad. All right.
That's wild.
He died 4 times. And when I asked him when he came back, I was like, bro, how was it? Did you fucking go through Dante's Inferno and battle? Virgil was next to you and you were going through all the, the spheres of hell and stuff like that. What was going on? Were you in heaven? And JC was like, yo, what's up? He's like, nah, it was nothing. I'm like, what? Not a fucking thing. Really?
As in, he doesn't remember? anything? Like, it was waking up from a dream?
He said
and
he doesn't remember anything, bro. Nothing.
Okay, all
He
right.
didn't see his fucking grandpa. Didn't see his grandma. Didn't see nobody, bro.
Want to hear my fucked up version of death?
You had a near-death experience?
Yeah, well, I can't say I did. I had psychedelic experiences that, for some reason, when I read near-death
ego
experiences, sure.
I had one of those too, and I saw Baphomet. So.
Oh man, that's intense. No, mine was more like understanding the cycles of things and seeing how, like, at least in this version, this is how my right brain logical thinking has put it together. So it's probably not accurate. It's probably like a little bit accurate. That atheism is true and faith is true at the same time, and reincarnation is real, but there's no afterlife. It's almost like we have a period in between of contemplation, and then we're back here. And when we realize that in real life, like, it suddenly, like, in that moment, in that trip, I was like, oh, so that's why people commit suicide on drugs, like on psychedelics. Sometimes it's not because they think they can fly. They want to start over once they realize it's just an endless fucking cycle and you can't stop.
Fuck, bro.
Yeah. So no, I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying that that's what was imbued by this experience. Now, granted, this was the same trip that hours earlier, could have been seconds, right? I don't know. But thousands of years earlier in that trip, I was being hugged by God itself and himself, herself, whatever, itself, telling me that everything always was and always is and always will be okay. Mm-hmm. And so unfortunately, my right brain has reconciled both of those together because, of course, even if you say nothing's okay, have you ever seen I Heart Huckabees? See it if you haven't, because it's way trippier. It's kind of put out there as like this poppy comedy, but it's way deep.
I Heart Huckabees.
And check that out. And there's a scene where this guy's having a breakdown, and like these guru people are there watching it, and he's like, nothing's okay. And they're like, if nothing's okay, then it's okay. And they keep like repeating this thing. And it sounds horrible. It sounds nihilistic on the face of it, right? It just sounds scary. But when you really look into it, no thing is okay. So it's like the concept of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like a paradox there. So it's like
to be nothing.
We're thinking in ego all the time. When we bring back our spiritual experiences, we're talking through this lens of the ego. And I think, conscious or not, a very big fear of death is pronounced in so many experiencers. And I'm not trying to say that to offend anyone. I really am not. It's just, unfortunately, what I came back with for the most part. And now, the reason why that DMT has been sitting there for a long fucking time is because every time I've tripped since that happened, like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I go back to that same exact place. And it's almost like a voice is going, what are you still, like, it's like a janitor sweeping halls.
Fucking idiot, you're still here, bro?
Like, what are you doing? Why are you coming back here, man? You got it. Just go live the now. Remember all those teachers telling you here and now? What are you doing here, man?
When you go in there, when you go into that room,
you had to remember again, did you? Why do you think your brain keeps repressing it when you go back to your fucking right logical thinking mind? So when you talk about the darkness of the secrets of the universe, man.
The entities, when they see Andy back again.
What the fuck, y'all? God damn! Fuck!
Wow. And I don't know, man. It's weird. It's like Truman Show shit too. You ever hear anybody talk psychedelics with like the Truman Show effect, solipsism and shit like that, where you get this feeling that you've created everything and it's all a dream?
Shit.
That's a terrifying
I had a
trip.
waking dream the other day for the first time ever.
People come back from that experience, that Truman Show experience, and just go, oh, cool. I was like kind of like seeing the collective in myself or whatever. It's like, I think it's deeper than that. I don't know what it is, but there is something to that. It's like, maybe we're going to get out of this and we're going to realize that we see all our friends and family because those are representations that we've created in our own consciousness for whatever we were interacting with out in the conscious world.
No, that's fucked, bro.
You know, and I'm not trying to be atheistic about this. I think I'm not. I don't know though.
No, that's crazy to think about.
Because I don't think there's no God either. I feel like that's why at the end of Dogma, the only answer Alanis Morissette playing God can give Bethany or whatever her name was just that, and she grabs her nose, because you don't get to know. It's like a wink. Like, nope, you'll never know. I don't know. It's weird. I came back thinking that, like, in all those endless cycles of births and deaths, you never get a chance to really, you don't get to slow down. And if time doesn't exist, you start to see those births and deaths as split seconds. And it's just absolute insanity.
That would make sense, right? It probably gets faster and faster and faster until you eventually become everything and nothing all at the same time.
Maybe that's why suicide's a sin. Maybe it's the only way out.
Yeah,
and they want you to keep going. Or something.
I've edited that exact thing out of podcasts before, because
I know. That's fair. That's totally fair.
You know what I mean? Because
it's way too touchy, man. I'm sorry for that.
Sucks. You know what I mean?
That's some off podcast talk.
Just to be respectful of people.
But
you know
yeah. And I only mean that, like, again, like I was saying before, like in that heat of the moment, like people, yes. And the people that have,
if anyone is battling with anything, just, reach out to people. You could
absolutely
reach out to me, or if you need somebody to talk to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Jesus, I didn't mean to bring the conversation to these depths.
Don't ever, Andy's a little stoned, so it's okay. And
yeah, totally.
Do anything irrational.
Absolutely not.
I love you. Everybody loves you. So
no, quite the contrary. I think that is breaking a rule of some sort. I don't think it's
a taboo. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, but I also, not talking about, I mean, like it itself, like, I think you absolutely should never do that, because I absolutely think there's a reason why many old traditions kind of warn against doing that. It's like breaking your cycle or breaking your spiral,
it's premature
stopping
ejaculation.
It before it. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We went to some weird places here tonight. This is cool.
This got fucking heavy, and we we would.
We were philosophical right off the bat.
Hollow Earth, and then it would go up, and then it'd be like, no, but did you know that that reality is fractured?
Yeah. Man, yeah. I guess indica does dark things.
I enjoyed this, bro. I think this is good. And
this was a fun conversation, man.
We should do this shit more often, bro.
I can't have these conversations with everybody. There's like to these kinds of depths, and just expect the other person to kind of know what I'm talking about without too much explanation. You swim in all these waters all the time. Like, you're immersed in this language.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you and your work.
Thank you, man. And I appreciate you and your work, bro. And for those that want to listen to my show, at the Juan Podcast on all social media platforms.
Hell yeah, man. And
where can people find your work?
Find me at The Deep Share on social media, just The Deep Share. You can go to thedeepshare.com, but there's not much there. I mean, I stream my podcast there in case anybody wants to not use other platforms. So I guess that's like the baseline. You can do that. But yeah, I'm on Odyssey. I'm on YouTube, pretty much everywhere. The Deep Share Podcast. I'm on Patreon. Dan and I do a killer show where we dig into a lot of old history, talking about Latin being probably the newest form of propaganda.
Yeah, shout out to Dan. And shout out
Dan
to
Unaki. But yeah, this was awesome, Juan.
Yeah, dude. Thank you for all those that tuned in, and hopefully we'll be doing this again very soon. I'm gonna have an episode out with Andy here on the Box Saga in a couple of weeks. So,
and Dan, yeah,
and
that was
Dan.
a good
We're
time.
gonna be doing a roundtable too, right, very soon with
our
new friend.
That's gonna be really fun.
It's gonna be interesting. So we have a lot of things in store. Make sure to love each other, be kind,
absolutely,
love yourself, and
peace.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Share Podcast. If you want to hear more, then hit that subscribe button. Follow me on all the social places. And remember, think for yourself, but don't always believe what you think. Till next time.
human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, that's hysteria. Enough, I get the point.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone.
What do we know? What do we know? If I know what we know, then I can tell you what we know, and if someone else knows, okay? I mean...